could have shown them the tools had they asked for it. But no, they locked me in this cell. And because they had taken away all my autonomy, I mean, it is such a violent and brutal thing to do for those who haven't experienced that, and I hope you never will. This is something that feels very serious. They take everything away from you, strip you naked, then sort of abuse you and push you in a cell, in a cellar somewhere, and block every connection to the outside world. You cannot speak to anybody, you sit in there, you can't even read a book. It took 2 months for them to give me a book. 2 months. They kept me in a little cell. And even the light to switch on or off you must ask the guards, because you haven't got the right to have lights on. Then new clothes. Or I wanted to have toilet stuff that is not tested on animals. They refused that. So I completely stopped cooperation and went on a hunger strike. This was the only option left to me, to do a hunger strike and to refuse any cooperation. So, but that was also very hard if you are in such a situation and then you don't eat. I mean, on the one hand, it feels good because it empowers you a bit. You think there's something left that I can do. But on the other hand, you feel your energy draining, and it's not. I mean, I felt very brittle, like made from thin glass, like somebody touching me, and I fall, and that's all. I felt also like, like very thin and light, and it felt like I'm going to die pretty soon. The 39th day, and I did drink tea with sugar. And also fruit juice, without which I wouldn't have survived that time so long. But on the 39th day, I had this very intense feeling of dying. I mean, I'm a mountaineering, and I felt I'm in a crevasse, in the glacier crevasse, this ice cover, and I'm just about looking out into the open, but underneath me is this dark crevasse, and I'm standing on such thin ice, and any moment I'm sort of breaking through and falling into the void. And this gave a strong impression on me. On the other hand, in 8 days, the courts were calling me. I had an appointment, so I was to go to court, to where they consider whether I should stay in prison. And so on that day, I decided to try to eat again, so that I have the strength to go to court, and eventually then to decide whether I resume the hunger strike. But I was so far gone that when I decided to eat myself, I got from the rubbish bin, from the kitchen, I got a tiny bit of orange, and I put this in the mouth, and it turned my stomach upside down, and it was really, I mean, it felt like all intestines coming out. So I called the doctor, and the doctor eventually came, and then he helped me back onto the feet, which was very hard, 14 days altogether. I needed sort of slow feeding with porridge mainly. I could walk again when I went to the court, and the court was an utter ridiculous farce. I was brought in by the guard, and there was the state prosecutor who said, I call on this guy to be put in a prison cell for another 2 months. And the defense said I'm against it, and then the judge said go 2 months. And I said, I want to know why, and I don't want to defend myself. And I have the right to defend myself, but they just pushed me out and said, no, we haven't got the time, in 5 minutes the next one is coming in. So it was complete farce. There was nothing clear. And then I realized, I mean, if you are considered apparently a political enemy, and if police is going for you in this big way, then you lose all your rights. You lose your rights. You have no safety anymore. I mean, these human rights that are so upheld, they don't exist in these dungeons anymore. And that's a very strange experience, I must say, and a very worrying at that. The whole thing is definitely a political trial for those who don't believe it. And it was a political move that got us out. There were protests in Austria every day outside the prisons. And I could hear them. I could hear them shout. Every day people were outside shouting. And there were protests in other countries. And eventually I got a newspaper clippings and I saw these things. and there were lots of pressure put on the minister. And eventually, after 104 days, the Minister of Justice decided to order me out, to order me to be removed from prison. So it was political pressure that got me out. The courts completely dropped me in. The police would have kept me in there till now and further. But it was political pressure that got me out. The public being ever more outraged about this treatment. Without that, I would still be in there. So there is a number of things that clearly prove, in my view, that it is a politically motivated trial case, and there's nothing about criminal activity behind it. For a start, there is a Secret Service report every year, and the report about last year says that the criminal activity that could possibly be related to animals has dropped to half of what it was before. Actually, only 22 cases. And if that sounds much to you, then I say, firstly, these 22 cases consist of something like ripped a poster for an animal show off the wall. That is one of the 22 cases. Or another one might be throw over a hunting platform. So these are the 22 cases. But there are, in the same year, 400,000 cases of criminal fraud, where somebody gets money or takes money by betraying others. And there were 6 million crimes altogether in this year. And there were about 5,000 criminal damages in Vienna alone per day. So a huge number in comparison to this very small amount. Also, if you compare this to international events, then you see that it's very little, also compared very little to 10 years before with regards to animal-related things. On the other hand, the Secret Service report says the legal activity for animals is exploding. So we have the fact that this big police onslaught on us happened a year after the criminal activity sank to half of what it was the year before, and the legal activity exploded. So 1 and 1 is 2. What could be the reason for this other than the legal activity? Also, the animal movement in Austria is very successful. We have a number of big advances, and it is obviously those that trigger that off. Also, there is people apparently who inform us about things, and they anonymously, we receive documents ever so often, and one is of the founding meeting of this special police unit. And in there we hear, I told you about this already, they recorded this debate where they say there is no criminal activity, so let's do it for 278A. Also, while I was in prison, there was a meeting of this special police unit, and they didn't debate on criminal activity and how can we solve it. This unit this protocol clearly says, the headline is, how can we damage and further destroy this animal group VGT? And then a few ideas were raised. We could take their charity status, we could look whether they have done tax fraud for an inheritance that they got. And many ideas were brought in, so they didn't debate at all on how to solve a crime. They only debated on how to stop us. Also, those 10 people that were chosen is a joke, because there is nothing concrete for them, and you could have chosen 10 others. You could have chosen 200 if you wanted, for the same non-existent reason. 10 was the minimum number that you need to have a criminal organization. Surprise, surprise, it was 10 people who were put in a prison on remand. So again, it can't be just coincidence that this is 10. Somebody sat down and said, we need 10, let's choose 10. This is exactly what happened. Also, they raided 6 different animal groups' offices, and all these are the groups that have the biggest impact on these confrontational campaigns. The other groups are groups that are more laid back or do street fairs or whatever, but they don't participate in the confrontational campaign.